Through 7 decades of continuous change and moments of national upheaval, Queen Elizabeth II was one of few reliable constants in modern public life. Her reign of 70 years and 214 days was the longest of any British monarch, the longest of any female head of state, and the second longest reign of any king or queen in history. So it's not surprising that for millions, the Queen was also a grandmother figure, always there, always the same, but with us always knowing that one day she wouldn't be.
And I know that today there are countless people in this country and around the world who have experienced the same sudden access of unexpected emotion. And I think millions of us are trying to understand why we are feeling this deep and personal and almost familial sense of loss.
Elizabeth was never supposed to be queen. Her uncle, Edward VIII, shocked the world when he abdicated just 325 days into the job in 1936. The crown instead passed to his brother George VI, making Elizabeth heir to the throne, aged just 10. 3 years later, World War II broke out. A life of duty had begun. In 1940, in the midst of war, 14-year-old Elizabeth made her first address, speaking directly to child evacuees separated from their families.
Thousands of you in this country have had to leave your homes and be separated from your fathers and mothers. My sister Margaret Rose and I feel so much for you, as we know from experience what it means to be away from those we love most of all.
4 years later, Elizabeth joined the Auxiliary Territorial Service, then the women's branch of the army, training as a mechanic. Although World War II would permanently shape her, as it did so many of her generation, it was in 1952 that Elizabeth's life really changed. While on a trip to Kenya, she was informed that her father had died aged just 56. At 25, she was now Queen Elizabeth II, head of the Commonwealth and head of state of many nations. As if the pressure wasn't enough, her first UK Prime Minister was 77-year-old Winston Churchill. An estimated 27 million of the UK's then 36 million citizens watched the first ever televised coronation the following year. 3 million more lined the route to Buckingham Palace. Having married Prince Philip in 1947, the Queen's early years on the throne mixed duty — she met everybody from JFK to Marilyn Monroe — with domesticity. Prince Charles was born in 1948, Princess Anne in 1950, Prince Andrew in 1960, and Prince Edward in 1964. In 1977, the Queen marked her Silver Jubilee, 25 years on the throne, with street parties throughout the UK, and she renewed a pledge she'd first made on her 21st birthday, committing the rest of her life to duty and service. It was a promise she would keep. Things wouldn't remain so rosy, however. In 1992, the Queen endured what she described as an annus horribilis, horrible year, in which 3 of her children saw their marriages break down, and her beloved Windsor Castle caught fire, destroying 100 rooms. That torment continued later into the decade, with the very public saga of Prince Charles and Diana's divorce in 1996, and the scandalous accusations of infidelity that preceded it.
Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded.
Anti-royal feeling reached its peak in the UK in 1997, when Princess Diana was tragically killed in a car crash in Paris just 1 month after her 36th birthday. The Queen's initial reluctance to react publicly to Diana's death and to the global outpouring of grief that followed was widely criticised as being cold and uncaring. But when she eventually did break her silence with a heartfelt televised tribute and was seen bowing to Diana's coffin, the Queen was roundly praised for weathering the storm and possibly even saving the royal family amid growing Republican sentiment.
We have all been trying in our different ways to cope. It is not easy to express a sense of loss, since the initial shock is often succeeded by a mixture of other feelings: disbelief, incomprehension, anger, and concern for those who remain.
Uachtaráin agus a coisa.
Support for the royal family continued to grow in the years following Diana's death. In 2011, the Queen and Prince Philip made a historic trip to Ireland, the first by a British monarch in 100 years. The visit, during which she expressed her sincere thoughts and deep sympathy for victims of a troubled Anglo-Irish past, was widely celebrated. Royal weddings and great-grandchildren dominated the final decade of the Queen's life, with Prince William and Kate Middleton marrying in 2011 and having 3 children: Prince George, Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle married in 2018 and gave the Queen more great-grandchildren, Archie and Lilibet. Several other royals followed suit. But it was during the COVID-19 pandemic that the Queen, deep into her 90s, became a symbol of optimism for so many. Her stirring "We Will Meet Again" address in April 2020 gave much-needed hope to a worried nation.
We should take comfort that while we may have more still to endure, better days will return. We will be with our friends again. We will be with our families again. We will meet again.
And for many, the image of the Queen, dressed head to toe in black, sitting masked and alone at the funeral of her beloved Prince Philip, captured the loneliness, isolation and grief so many felt during those darkest days of the pandemic. The Queen celebrated an astonishing and record-breaking 70 years on the throne earlier this year, although by then the royal turbulence of past decades had returned, with her son, Prince Andrew, stripped of his duties amid sex abuse allegations, and Prince Harry's relationship with the rest of the family disintegrating in the most public of ways. Queen Elizabeth's passing is not just an enormous event for the royal family, but it marks a hugely significant moment in modern history too. Today's funeral, with its solemn gun carriage processions, militaristic precision and last post on the bugle, has been decades in the planning. There will be tears, there will be sadness, but there will be moments of joyous reflection too, and an opportunity, to paraphrase King Charles' own tribute to his mother, to look back on a life well lived.
Queen Elizabeth was a life well lived, a promise with destiny kept, and she is mourned most deeply in her passing.